Thanks for doing this.
It's a great pleasure and honor to be here.
I think of the claim that we went to war with Iran because of its nuclear program as a kind of IQ test. Anyone who repeats that claim has failed the test. As you pointed out many times, all wars are engineered. And we're just having a discussion at breakfast that I think is worth recounting for others. So First World War, one of the most momentous events in world history, ended Christian Europe, killed more than 20 million people, wounded another 20 million, just really reordered the globe, and then led to the Second World War. So the United States joined that war in 1917. Toward the end, it had already been going for 3 years. But one of the main reasons the U.S. got into that war is because of the sinking of a passenger ship called the Lusitania off the coast of Ireland 2 years before in 1915, in which 120 odd Americans were killed. It was sunk by a German U-boat. And even at the time, there were people who said, I don't think this is not quite on the level. But now, 112 years later, we know a lot more about the sinking of Lusitania. And I wonder if you wouldn't just mind recounting what you said to me this morning at breakfast, because it gives us perspective on the effect of propaganda in wartime.
Right. Yes, I mean, the sinking was clearly a key factor in creating in the media in America anti-German sentiment quite successfully. And so, yeah, the question is, what happened really? The way it's presented was, well, there's a passenger ship with American passengers, just civilians traveling across the Atlantic and sunk by a German submarine. Well, that's like an act of war against America.
Yes.
Got to do something about this. We're going to declare war on Germany. Well, that's not a representation of the facts. What really happened was there was this British plan to get America into the war on the British side against Germany, which was very difficult because, of course, actually, ethnically, a majority at the time of Americans were of German origin. Even German speakers still, by that time, German was still widely used as a language in America. And so to get America into war against Germany is a bit of a feat, to arrange that.
Yes, it is.
So how did this happen? And that is a good example of the extent to which the plotters that want war go. And it's good for people to think about that because, of course, ordinary people don't want war in any country. Most ordinary people are good people. And that creates this problem that they just can't imagine that we're dealing today, as we look at the world, with such dark and evil forces that are intentionally plotting to create a world war or get countries to declare war,
Yes.
So that's why...
That is true. People cannot even permit themselves to believe that could be true.
Yeah. And that's where studying history is important because we need to know the facts of what happened in the past to understand the present and make some predictions about the future or prepare for what could happen in the future. And the past teaches us that there are some evil elements out there and they're not really, they're not people that are representative of ordinary people. The majority of people wouldn't intentionally harm others. But we do have such people out there and often in very important and powerful positions. So what happened was step number one, Britain did this very officially. It listed the Lusitania as an auxiliary naval military ship. And of course, as you can imagine, the German Imperial Army and Navy went by the book. I mean, that's one thing Germans are famous for. And of course, the British knew this. So the moment they would list it on their official list of what are our ships officially declared to be military ships, it was on there as an auxiliary military ship. The Germans would, of course, target it. Now, when the Germans then saw this, German military, oh, well, hang on, isn't this a passenger ship? Well, you can reuse, of course, passenger ships for warfare. So that seems to be what they're doing. But then they realized, oh, actually, they're taking passengers in. They plan to take passengers in America. And so partly they sort of half realized, well, this could be a part of a bigger plot. That's not good, and we don't want to sink passengers. on the other hand, it was listed there. So that in many ways, they had no choice. What they did then was the German military command, they put out, and the German embassies implemented in America, they put out ads into American newspapers stating, and we have copies of these ads, warning people, don't board the Lusitania. It is listed as a military auxiliary ship. It is on our target list.
With the German government put ads in American newspapers telling Americans not to board the Lusitania because they might sink it?
Exactly. Indeed.
Well, that's incredible.
And it turns out that in some cities, the big newspapers refused to carry these ads because they were clearly controlled by people that had the same views as the British side in this war and wanted America to join the war. So the ads weren't always published successfully everywhere, but quite a few were published. So that's the situation. Despite that, there were passengers on board. No doubt some efforts were made to make sure certain groups, you would have some people on there for sure. Maybe you pay them to board even, who knows? We don't know these details. We know the facts that there were passengers, American passengers on board, American citizens. And the Germans had warned, we're going to sink this. And it's not quite clear whether there was actually military equipment on there. There seemed to be the indication that there was. Because, you can imagine that the goal was really to make sure that the Germans will sink it. So the best way then is to actually have military equipment on there and, have some visibility when it's in the dock and something's loaded. And we do have some indication that this is happening. Of course, later this was denied. But there's also, various people looking at the sunken wreck. And still, it's basically there is a good chance that there was military ammunition and other equipment on there. Now, so that's one thing. The other thing is, well, how would the captain of this ship handle this? As he crosses with his passengers and potentially military load, and of course he must have been aware that it's listed as an auxiliary military ship, as he crosses the Atlantic. Well, the British at that time had actually broken the secret code for encryption that the German military was using, the Enigma code, and they therefore could read the messages between the U-boat submarines and headquarters and so on, which of course is another indication that, this could not really have been such a big surprise to Britain. And something like this, of course, must have been the reason why the captain of the ship, of the Lusitania, was happy to go because, of course, he has to trust his admiralty and his country's leadership. They said, no, it'll be fine. We make sure you'll be fine. We know where the U-boats are, the Germans are, and we'll guide you on the track that will keep you safe. So they guided him, as it turns out, straight into one of those German submarines. But the captain didn't know. He was told this is the safe path. Now, where I'm sure he started to become suspicious was when the order was suddenly then given in the vicinity or about to approach the vicinity of a German submarine to slow down the engines, because that never makes sense. And there's a good BBC documentary on this where they didn't hide the facts, and they have the First Lord of the Admiralty as the key figure. Who was that? None other than Winston Churchill. And they show how he gives the order. Now instruct the captain to slow down the engines. And even his underlings saying, well, sir, this sort of increases the risk. Should we really do that? This is my order. Give the order. And that's what they did. They slowed down the Lusitania. And of course, it was unavoidable then. The U-boat, they saw them, it's on the list, they have to follow the orders, and they sank it. And then, of course, the next day you had all these headlines, the Huns, the butchers added again, as the Germans were described in the British First World War propaganda. And it was an important factor in getting America into war. So basically it was a false flag. And that has been a key mechanism to start or, get countries to join a world war. It's not the only incidents, but it shows you the devious nature of the plotters. And that's what we have to be aware of today in this day and age, as we are, unfortunately, on the brink of a third world war. again, most people think, surely third world war. Nobody wants a world war. Well, ordinary people don't, and I don't want it, and you don't want it.
No.
But there are people out there who are really doing everything to get there, and a false flag is likely to be the beginning of this. As we talk about peace, as we have peace negotiations, just one vicious and successful, cunning false flag, and then magnified with false information by the media, is unfortunately still enough.
Spring is the most refreshing time of year. Nothing complements it better than Black Rifle coffee, lots of it. This is an American company founded by veterans with conviction. They built the whole thing around a simple idea. Do it right or just don't do it. They're definitely doing it right. We know because we drink it all day long. If you want coffee without theatrics, start with just black, whole bean if you grind it yourself, ground if you don't. No sweeteners designed to disguise mediocrity, no seasonal gimmicks masking weak beans. Just bold American roasted coffee that delivers what it promises. And if you prefer variety without lowering the bar, try these supply drop variety rounds, a curated lineup of pod roasts that rotate in but never compromise strength. Consistency, standards, discipline, out with watered down blends, in with pure American coffee. You can grab just black or supply drop variety rounds on Amazon, or go right to blackriflecoffee.com to stock up from the source. Black Rifle Coffee, veteran founded, American roasted, still standing, still brewing. 9/11, the details of which are still classified for reasons no one will explain. No one's attempting to declassify it, which tells you everything. Led to 20 years of war and the deaths of millions.
Yeah. Now, actually, on this topic, I think there is the other important parallel. We've been seeing this war on Iran by the US and Israel. And of course, it has major economic consequences, dire consequences. That's something we can talk about. But also, this is another reason why we should look back at this era of the First World War and how we got into this, because it was the first great war. It was, in Britain